Hey, Mike, what do Kelly Slater and PT have in common?
I don't know. They're both world champs?
Nope. They both own Endless Summer box set.
Oh my God, rad. You guys, you can get it too. The link's in the show notes.
Life has its twists, has its turns.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Quivercast, where we chat with surfers from all around the world, from all walks of life, and we get their story. Find us at www.thequivercast.com. I am Mike, your host. Let's get into the show. Hello everyone, this is Mike here with the Quivercast, and today, wow, we have Lindsey Jacobellis. How are you doing, Lindsey?
I am great. Just came off a really fun weekend after the Supergirl surf in Oceanside and gearing up for my book tour. So I'm definitely on a high. My books are showing up and it's getting closer and closer to the launch date. So I'm very excited.
So awesome. And the book's coming out in October, right?
October 17th is the official launch.
So stoked. I am so looking forward to reading that. So let's start there, actually. Let's talk about the process of writing a book. How is that?
This was pretty interesting because during the shutdown, I actually looped back and got into writing a children's book. After the 2014 Olympics happened, I put together a story and it just lived in my computer in like a Word document. And I had this concept of how I wanted to always write this children's book about the story of Sochi, the dog I brought home from Russia, and how he found his forever home. And I was always kind of tweaking that story here and there, but I knew nothing of the publishing world and had no idea where to start. You know, you're so consumed with every detail and all these tasks that you have in your everyday life that naturally just fell to the back burner. And it was just a series of weird events that led me to the illustrators, the two women that helped illustrate and bring my story to life. And we decided to just self-publish and find a printer, start off with, 500 copies and then going and building up to 2022 Olympics. We had to keep ordering more, had it on Amazon, and it was kept selling out because they were stateside and they were sending out the orders while I was over in Beijing. So seeing how much work was involved in just that children's book, which is about like 30 pages, the fact when the co-writer Daniel Paisner came to me and said, I need to write your story after I won in 2022, I was like, oh man, like a book, like a memoir. I'm like, I can't keep my dates and my facts like completely organized. I have no idea where I would start. And it was a very inspiring process because so many people believed how important my story was and how it could help so many individuals in all walks of life. So I decided, yes, I'll do this. So then I was like, well, I guess I'm going to have to start with my birth year and start going and filling in, important details and big key moments and start structuring basically my skeletal life right there on a Google Doc. And I had my mom involved and my dad. And I was like, do these seem all right? Did I break my arm at this time? Did I gymnastics at this time? Like what was happening? So once we could build out that, I was then talking with Dan and we were trying to figure out what key components we were really trying to pull from and pull the important stories from those specific time periods. And then I would write out in pretty hefty detail of the story, of the background, and just very intense or pivotal moments in my life. And then we would come in and write something together, and we kind of blend both of our writing styles together. So I'd come in with all the facts, and all the heavy details, and he would add his little flair and the story to life. So we'd work chapter by chapter, and we'd go back and forth on Zoom calls and have a bunch of transcripts, so then he could kind of, resort back to them if I was in an area that he couldn't get a hold of me. And we worked on that pretty much immediately after the Olympics, and started working on it and getting the proposal and sent it to HarperCollins. And HarperCollins was extremely excited to pick up my story. And I have a female editor, and my PR team is all comprised of all these women too. So I think it was very fitting to have such a female empowering moment. And it's been quite the learning process and learning curve, a lot of sink or swim moments for me in this, but this was incredible. I have just tremendous guidance and how this looks, and I'm just asking so many questions, apologizing for all the questions I have to ask, because I'm sorry, I don't live in this world. Sorry if I'm bugging you. What do you need from me? Yep. But we finally have the book printed, and it's starting to be distributed out to individuals that I made a list for, and HarperCollins has their people that they're sending it to. So it is starting to make its way around the world.
Awesome.
So it's been a long time coming, and it almost feels like, should it be already out already? I've been working through this whole scenario. Yeah. You haven't seen it yet? Oh, that's right. It's still not there. We are at almost the peak of launch, and it's been quite the journey.
So you have all this workload, and you're working so hard to make this book. Where do you live? Do you live in Southern California?
I'm in Southern California most of my summertime, but then in the winter, I'm kind of just out of a
resorts. Out of snowboarding.
Right. I'm out of a snowboard bag and a duffel bag, and pretty much that's it.
Are you going out and surfing when you're like, I need a break? Or what takes you away from work?
100%. I would say in 2010, when I first came to California and started just doing those summer times, like, I'm going to go to California for the summer. Pay a couple of spots for summer. And then every year it kind of seemed to extend a little longer and longer. And then I was like, that's ridiculous. I obviously should lease a place here because I'm spending so much time here. I'm always coming back to visit friends. So it makes sense. And then I realized it was kind of a part of my winning formula to spend so much time in California during the summer. On the road in the winter, it's cold. You're carrying a lot of heavy equipment, and I also have hardware in my body, my knee, my elbow, my thumb. So just that cold weather and that high humidity on the East Coast and in the mountains, I needed a break. So when I would come to California in the summertime, I'm walking around and I'm like, nothing hurts. And I go in the water and I surf, and the water is so healing and so soothing. So naturally found my way just getting more and more addicted to surfing and cruising up and down the coast from, down in La Jolla, Blacks all the way up to Malibu can be a stretch that I kind of scope out all the time. And then I finally took my first big surf trip down to Bali this past summer. It's been always on my to-do list, and I hadn't had a vacation, for several years. And after the Olympics, I was working on this book a lot, and it's time. I'm doing it. I'm getting in the water. I'm surfing Bali. So I've been very fortunate to have that time where I really get to decompress in the summer, and I'm focusing on my workouts, and I'm surfing, and, taking care of my sponsor obligations and other opportunities that pop up.
And when did you start surfing?
I learned when I was 19 in Sayulita, Mexico. But then it was something that you do once or twice a year, when it all of a sudden, people are going surfing and we're going to. So it wasn't until, several years later that I moved to California in 2010 that I was like, I'm going to move to California. I'm going to be a surfer babe. And, I'm just going to live the dream. on this off time. I hammer my body throughout the winter, and I need that time where I'm doing a sport that doesn't have the same impact. I mean, I'm not one of the pro surfers that's doing airs and has that. So I'm trying to do turns, and I'm trying to really just enjoy the water. So I'm not getting that same impact as I might find myself on the slopes. So it's been a rewarding and, relieving time in the summer. And it definitely helps still keep my body in really good working order. I'm getting a lot of endurance and power endurance training, and combine that with my lifting. It's a great cross training opportunity for myself.
That's rad. They're both boarding sports. You're a gold medalist in a boarding sport. Are they even similar though, besides being on a board?
I would say surfing feels like riding powder.
Does it?
Really nice deep power. However, the only thing that has no similarity is when you're trying to understand what the ocean is doing and get yourself in position to catch a wave. So the actual surfing part came very naturally to myself, but trying to understand how the tide's affecting, where the shoulders are, how I'm shifting back and forth, and understanding point breaks and beach breaks, and these sandbars are shifting. That's taken a while, but I try to be surfing with people that were better than me, or linking up with pros when I can, and seeing why the hell are they paddling over there? And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, well, a set just popped up. Well, how did you know? And it's they have some trigger from down the point that they look way far down the line, and they see a line coming, and they're like, okay, in 60 seconds, it's going to pop up over here. Something that I wasn't aware of until you understand these pros are looking for these little cues to give them an indication of where something might be popping up. And I'm still not proficient at it, but I've gotten better, and it's been exciting to see if I can, make those calls on the fly. But it's still a learning process, and it's still the ocean, and you have no control over it.
Mountain, powder, snow versus the ocean. Either one of them, you really have control. Anything can happen. It's still Mother Nature. And they're not similar, but did it help you growing up in the outdoors and understanding a little bit about nature and how it works?
Well, I feel like I just never take Mother Nature for granted, and I never assume. There's a lot of situations, even on small days, like you're not fully paying attention. You're just out there kind of messing around. And then all of a sudden, like a big set out the outside comes, and then you're like, oh God. And you're just getting smashed on the inside. You're like, well, I guess I took my eye off of the horizon and missed all the other cues that people were actually adjusting for. Yeah. And, that can be the same thing, especially when you are going into side or backcountry or on a mountain. You need to know what the weather and the precipitation and the temperatures have all been in that preceding 2 weeks. So you are best prepared and understanding what you're walking into, because you're putting yourself at risk in those aspects. It can be fun. It's snowboarding and surfing are relatively easy as far as once you're up and going, but your variable is the ocean. That can be kind. Your variable in snowboarding is the big mountains and the extreme outdoors. And all of a sudden those can change very drastically and very quickly.
Yes. What kind of board are you mostly riding? What's your everyday board?
My everyday surfboard. I actually have a quiver board down in Encinitas. They shape me some boards and they make them all custom for me. And then they let me pick out my color. So I've been really excited about purples lately. And I have my surfboards matching my race snowboards that I'm on. So my whole quiver is purple.
Rad. Okay. On Instagram the other day, or maybe it was even yesterday, you went longboarding. How different was that?
I mean, that was so incredible. And that's a really cool thing that the Supergirl event has to offer. They bring in so many different women of all these different skill sets. And when somebody says, hey, do you want to try this with me? And yeah, of course, I'm not going to be great at it, but why not put myself in this position to have an opportunity to learn from a pro and, challenge myself in a different way. And I think it's also, it feels good that I'm not chasing that like 1% of perfection. That it's better because I feel like my learning curve within just that session goes up like astronomically. Because if you're starting at 0, you jump up in these big increments because you're taking so much in and you're able to effectively execute. You get a couple of cues from a pro, try this and this, and that's what you're focusing on, and you see a huge leap in improvement. But when we're breaking down a start section at the top of a course and you're looking for those milliseconds and those hundredths difference, like that can drive you crazy to be chasing that. So to start with something that you don't have a lot of experience with, it's actually more rewarding.
Yeah, I bet. When you're going to do the Supergirl, how fun is that? Is that a fun gig?
Oh my God. The Supergirl event, I lost it.
All women's professional surf contest.
This is an all women's event. It is a free event. It started with just surfing. I mean, this was 17 years strong for ASA Entertainment to be hosting this. It started in Huntington. Now it's been in Oceanside for basically the last 15 years.
Yeah.
And every year it gets bigger and bigger, and they bring in the concerts, and it's basically a music festival, but it has art, it has workouts, it has beach volleyball, it has esports, it has surfing, and it has longboarding. Then we have all of our sponsors that are bringing in incredible women within their industry to then blend in. So it becomes this platform that all of these young girls can see, look at how many different career paths are obtainable for myself. And all of these women can interact and meet one another and share each other's struggles and like share each other's wonderful moments of success. That's what it is. And to see how it can embody the whole family and, the dads and, the moms and the brothers, everyone still has such a great time there. And that's how I met Sophia Archie and Sally Cohen on the longboard side. Like, I don't have a lot of interaction with the longboarders. I see a lot of shortboarders because I'm shortboarding a lot. So to meet these girls that go back and forth from Hawaii to California, and they're like, try one of our boards and we'll go with you. And if you're ever in Hawaii, come visit us. So, and then it's just expanding your friendship circle. And women need to be there for each other. So working this event every year, seeing it get bigger and bigger and supporting female empowerment in all aspects, it's just absolutely wonderful. And the ASA had that foresight 17 years ago to see this is a niche that is not being utilized and needs to be given an opportunity to grow well ahead of the curve of the female empowerment jump. And so it's wonderful that now it is, the standard for an event. So we're trying to build it back into the snow side of things. COVID threw a little bit of a hiccup in that, but we are looking to get the snow side back this winter season. So, I mean, again, ASA gives me an opportunity to be like, do you want to call the webcast and you want to call live action? And I'm like, okay, sure. Let's try my hand at this. If I'm not great at it, you hire somebody else. I've been having a blast doing it over the years. And even though I'm not extremely knowledgeable in surfing, I can understand the movement and I know what is involved and I know what particular strengths and what muscles have to be actually utilizing and what the physical demand of the body to do what those athletes are doing and giving them credit, because most people can so easily say, oh, well, that turn wasn't that great, or that backside hit wasn't that great. And it's like, well, I'll tell you, I went out and surfed. There's a gnarly sandbar that's making everything crash so that these ladies are getting up and ripping down the line before it gets to that sandbar is easier said than done. So
of course,
it makes me give the credit deserved for these women and, detail of the sport that on a basic level, so people need to know so they can understand coming into this sport, what it's all about.
My perspective on the Supergirls, it's a fabulous sport of surfing, all the other adventures around the park, but also, there's a lot of women, they're spotlighted and they're ripping so hard, and it's so cool that they get the spotlight.
It is this platform that these girls can start on. They can look at their mentors and they can eventually be meeting them or even surfing against them.
Yeah.
For Kira Pinkerton to be going up against Sage and to beat her, it's a win-win for both of them. They were surfing both incredibly well in challenging conditions. It was just how the ocean was cooperating with them. And one surfer gets into a great rhythm and it turns out to be, one girl's day over another. And it just happens like that. That's what the ocean has to offer. But it doesn't take away from Kira then saying like how influential Sage was to her,
of course,
coming up, and how she motivated her and that she was so excited to be in a heat with her. You hear those interviews that those girls are doing and you can't help but almost be moved to tears because you feel that, who you were looking up to and what was pushing you and what just were grinding your gears as a kid to just get after it. So I see that and I hear that and it's so wonderful and it's such a beautiful event.
You grew up basically driving the snow every weekend with the family. You had an extended family also. So you guys had this big group of people. You were in this snow lifestyle. And now you're meeting all these professional surfer ladies, women that, are top level. You're probably listening to their story. Is their story similar to how you grew up? Lifestyle wise, I mean.
I think the surfing community is a little different because, they're not having to move as a big mass of people. You'll see have the teams, but ultimately they're traveling and following the swell and they're traveling the specific QS circuit from, this stop, this time of year, we're here and there and there. So they're kind of all moving in this like huge pod together. And usually the events have that holding period where they're trying to wait for the best waves. So it gives those individuals a time to connect with their competitors and hang out on a different level. But they're certainly traveling the world at an earlier age than I ever was.
Oh, really?
I think that experience is a little different where I was constantly just getting up to Southern Vermont and that was my exposure. And we did it with 2 other families and that was our little pod, but it wasn't quite worldly yet. I didn't start traveling internationally until I was 15 for junior worlds, where some of these athletes are starting to go crazy and absolutely gorgeous places where I was just going to the cold places. I was like looking back, I'm like, if I only grew up in California, what would I have been on that path? But you don't know how it's going to shake out. There's not this blueprint that you can absolutely follow and you'll get this, professional athlete out of it. There's just so many things. And as you read in my book, there's certain pivotal moments that I chose to do one thing over the other. And who knows if I had gone the other way, how I could have possibly linked up to the opportunities that I did get. So that's the crazy thing. And that's the wonderful thing about surfing, that it is giving a lot of opportunity to these youngsters. And that's also what Supergirl is getting, because we have an international field of all these women and these girls are meeting other ladies from around the world. So when they're starting to go on the QS and they go to even those locations, the local surfer from that area, they are already friends with that. And they're then plugged into the culture. They're getting educated, understanding, appreciating what's around them. So it is wonderful that has gotten younger. I definitely had to wait a little bit to have that experience in the snowboarding world.
What about culture, snowboarding and skiing? I'm going to group those together because you started off as a skier, right? So are they similar, snowboarding and skiing? As the cultures
goes, probably not. I mean, we're all those, diehards that love to get out on the mountain early and experience the best conditions, yet,
2 different sports?
Those two separate sports, and they have their own different styles underneath, because skiing now has freestyle skiing. They have traditional, downhill, giant slalom, And then, you know, you have the freestyle moguls. So there's a couple different disciplines on that, as well as snowboard. Snowboard, we have half pipe, we have slope style, we have border cross. Those are the different, and GS racing as well, have those different disciplines under our sport. So there's a lot of wiggle room with what you're trying to go into. You could be the skier, but are you going to be the intense downhill skier, or are you going to be more laid back freestyle skier? So I think it then becomes more about the individual and how they embrace the sport and how it makes them feel, because it always came down to snowboarding was so freeing and it was so new and fun. And I was chasing, you know, my brother down the mountain skiing, but then when he fell in love with snowboarding, I naturally wanted to do it because my brother was having fun at it. And of course he's going to know what's best. So I followed suit. Ultimately, it was kind of what I did. And every now and then I jump on skis and I'll go on the same mountain. And it almost feels like an entirely different mountain. It's just a refresher.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah, I grew up on Stratton, started skiing, and basically did most of my life snowboarding. And you go down, you know, certain trails and you have your typical turn pattern. You kind of stay similar to that because of the way that the fall line goes. But with skis, it can be completely different, and I can kind of map out a totally different line that I would on a snowboard. So it makes it like, oh, this run is really fun, and it's not maybe my favorite run on a snowboard, but it is on skis. So that's why, you know, I love looking into surfing and surfing's history and the longboard versus, you know, the shortboard, and how the styles are so different, even though it's relatively like the same sport. So.
Yes, exactly. You're kind of the beginning of the snowboard history, right?
I mean, I'm pretty close. There. I wasn't the beginning, but I was pretty early on the scene, considering where the sport was in its development, especially for border cross itself, because then I was essentially then developing with the sport. But I think first border cross was one that Sean designed like way back when, and that was like late 80s or something when I was born in 85. So it had kind of been around and blending that motocross style sport and throwing it into a snow world. And that's ultimately kind of what came about and how the sport was born.
Was there a period in your life when you were moving from skis to snowboard that you were doing both? Or did you just pick snowboard and that's it?
No, we would do both. And, you know, my whole family was into snowboarding as well, but we still had all of our ski equipment. And, you know, we decided that we'd ski in the morning when the conditions were the best. And we wanted to hit all of our favorite runs before everything got crowded. And then we'd go in for lunch. And then we'd swap out of our boots, because you never want to stay in your boots anyways while you're sitting in lunch. So it's like, you get ready for lunch, like kick off those like really uncomfortable ski boots, slip on your snowboard boots, walk through the village, and you could grab a sandwich or a pizza or sit down and then go out for the afternoon. It might be a little scraped and piled up, but the snowboard seemed to handle those kind of like skied off conditions a little better on the East Coast. So that was always our cycle, Saturday and Sunday. Then get our boards to Mountain Riders and Ekeep and have them all, you know, waxed and prepped, and they'd store them there for us. So we weren't having to carry them back and forth. So they're providing us that service. And then we'd pick them up on Friday night. So we had it again, like really early Saturday morning in case there was ever a powder day, in case.
Yeah. There you go. And you grew up in Connecticut, right?
Yes.
You're not far from the water. Did you, surfing ever come into you? Was it ever in your life or in your brain that
no,
I could even surf here, or I could surf not far away from here?
No, I'd go to the beach every now and then.
Oh, would you?
And we'd have family vacations on Cape Cod or Nantucket, but we were boogie boarders. Like my parents, and there wasn't there wasn't the big scene there. So it's like, you know, you let your kid go in the ocean for hours at a time. You strap that flotation device on their wrist. And my parents were like, cool, we can have a vacation. You're safe. Like, you're right in here. You're floating between the lifeguard buoy things. Like, you're great. Like, we'll put you in the brightest wetsuit possible and we can't lose sight of you. Like, that was easy. And that was like, you're just beyond the shore break and then you get slammed into the sand. But every now and then you'd see surfing like way out, further the break. And, for some reason I didn't get that push from our family to try that. Maybe it was just cost of entry or it didn't make sense because we weren't at the beach enough. So the boogie boards were kind of the easy thing to kind of throw in with the family stuff for the beach.
Have you ever surfed the East Coast now at all?
I have, yes. I've gone to New Hampshire and Rhode Island because my brother still lives in Massachusetts. So there's been a couple of times where we've surfed there, but the water's a lot colder. And and I just haven't been around during those times where the storms have come through or the season seems right. It just makes more sense to have all of my surf stuff here. And when it's my downtime and I'm off season, I can give my 100% like downtime to surfing and catching up with all of my friends in the water.
Do you surf by yourself?
I do surf a lot by myself, but when I get there, there's always a chance I know one, if not multiple people out in the break, depending on where I go. So I like to challenge myself and not feel like I'm held back because I don't have somebody to get in the car and go surf with. I feel like I've traveled the world and, when I was learning to surf more in California, I was surfing a lot with my friend Amy. And if she wasn't able to surf, then like I wouldn't go surf. But then I was thinking, I was like, well, I shouldn't not go surf just because my only a couple of friends that I had at the time in California can't go with me, then I should just go surf. Like I'll meet people and you do, and you start going the same locations and you start seeing people. And so you naturally have these friends in the water. And even when I go to lowers and they see me there, they're like, it must be summer because Lindsey's here.
Yeah. So, that's right.
I do have those friends that I surf with. I have friends that, I do other, activities with. So I feel like I jump into all different circles and, just keep them guessing, I guess.
Yes. Is Lowers your favorite break or what's your favorite surf break?
I'm really close to Salt Creek. So I surf there if it's a time restraint and I really only have like an hour to mess around. Yeah. And I will go up to Huntington and I'll hit up like river jetties a lot because that's kind of like the closest thing I've found to like a heavy day at Oceanside or Blacks. Like it could really up and it can throw, and I'll try to start, looking for that barrel, or I try to push myself and I'll be feeling it. And then, you just get slammed the wrong way. Like, I pushed myself too hard. I didn't need to do that.
What kind of waves are you looking for? Are you looking for that heavy kind of throwing wave?
I don't really like the super, super heavy stuff.
Okay.
Because I feel like I get slammed enough in my sport and my body's been through enough. The Lowers is an incredible wave because it's so playful and it helps, and it gives you time to plan out your turns and build up speed. And that is really, really fun because I feel like I do have good rail to rail control because I think that feels the closest to snowboarding. I'm not strapped in. So I feel like if I pop up and my feet are in the right place and my back foot is all the way back in that traction pad on that little kicker, I'm like, I'm locked in it because I almost feel like I am locked on with bindings. Like I feel really good. That doesn't always happen, but
no, I get that.
Yeah. Especially when you're having to dig and fight into that wave and like be really forward on your board so you can get into that wave faster and beat other people on the pop up. I do try to challenge myself. I don't want to keep riding the same wave over and over again because then you're not looking for how the ocean is changing and how it's moving. You get just kind of complacent. And I feel like I'm not challenging myself as a surfer or as a water enthusiast. So going to river jetties or going down to blacks and having those moments where I'm like, oh, I should have known not to be there. I am learning the hard way. It's helpful. And I constantly look for ways to challenge myself because I want to get better. If it's something that I really enjoy, I'm not going to be like, oh, I'll get around and do a couple of surf sessions here or there. I get really into it, and whatever I really enjoy, I want to do it more, and I'll try to make up and work a lot harder to open up and get free time to have that chance to get in the water or do something else.
Do you like challenging yourself?
I do, and I like putting myself in situations that I can get potentially uncomfortable. Because then I feel like I am challenging myself and I am growing from that situation, whether, I'm doing it and I'm failing or I'm doing it and just struggling and then slowly figuring it out. I feel like I'm not just settling in and accepting that I can't get better from that situation.
Now let's talk about your book that's coming up. Like I said, I'm super excited. October 17th, Unforgiving. It's Lessons from the Fall.
Yes.
And we kind of talked about the process of writing the book. How was going back in history of your life and writing the book? Was it good memories, bad memories?
It's mostly good memories, but obviously in 2006, that was a hard memory to work through. I had been working through those kind of moments with my sports science coach, my mental coach, Denise Scholl, and trying to figure out, we can't completely ignore it. We can't just completely be encompassed with it. We have to find that happy medium and understand my emotions and my reactions to these moments so then I'm not caught off guard. Ultimately, the reason why I wanted to write this book is because I wanted to give myself a chance to tell my story from my perspective. Every other newspaper or sports writer wanted to say their spin on things. They'd interview me and I'd tell them in depth what I'd been working on or what was really happening. But as they'd edit things out and kind of take things out of context, it really wasn't giving the whole story. It was just the tidbits that they were trying to put in that really kind of just suited the angle that they were trying to go with their titles of their articles or their coverage. And that was always really frustrating because I felt like, oh man, I really had a really great interview with these people. And then you'd read it and then like, oh, like that wasn't the angle I was thinking they were going to use. So again, it was somebody always blending my perspective and how they wanted to deliver it through theirs. So
kind of twisting it?
It wasn't twisting it, but it was leaving out like the key factors or finding a great positive note. They were not always looking for that. They were just saying like, well, these are the facts. This is what happened. And then just attach like words that weren't very flattering to the scenario. So looking back and then having to go through certain key moments in time and remember those things, it was very challenging to write about. It was extremely challenging to write the Torino chapter because I had to watch the footage so I could break down what was happening and take you through that entire final and trying to understand and remember what I would be feeling as a 19-year-old in that specific moment and what led up to that moment. So that definitely took some time and some wine to get through. And talking with Daniel, and he was so great at, really understanding the terminology of snowboarding and trying to capture that. So it wasn't just this book that was just reading verbatim what I had said. It was really a deep understanding of how it could be relating to other athletes and how it could be relating to the general public who aren't into action sports. Then you see your life mapped out in these moments, and then you notice that there's some crazy moments that you had some incredible growth as an individual. And a lot of that doesn't happen without setbacks and upsets, and then having to figure out how to work through those scenarios. So ultimately, the reason why I wanted to write the book is tell my perspective, but then give that positive reinforcement that if you still love something, if you still work at something, you keep getting knocked down, you can keep working towards that goal and not give up on yourself. If you really ultimately want this, you can make it work. That translates into any avenue of life. And I wanted my story to inspire. I wanted to comfort other athletes if they've ever felt that way. And I never wanted to have an athlete ever feel that way. I think about watching the Super Bowl and the person that makes the winning catch, but then I'm thinking about the defense that failed to, block that, or a baseball player that strikes out and ends the inning and then the other team wins. Like, I always feel for those other athletes because I know what was on the line. I know what they were preparing for and how much pressure. Yes, that is their job. That's what they train to do. But in the end, we are people. We are human. We make mistakes. It might not be our day. And I saw it this weekend, surfing. Like,
you saw all day.
You know
every heat.
The capability of these surfers. And if they're given that opportunity, that wave, if they can get to that shoulder, they are going to wow you. But if it doesn't come, or the timing is just not right, that sport is wild. If you are in, on Slater's Wave or the Wave Garden or at Waco where they press the button and you get that same wave as your competitor got, like, that's a whole other playing field than dealing with Mother Nature.
Right.
And that's what a lot of people forget.
Yeah. How was it being young women when this happened to you? Your headspace has got to be different today than it was back then.
Absolutely. I mean, back then, the only thing was winning. I only put a mark on accomplishment when it was a win, and not realizing that the moments in between and making those strides are just as important, and losing our opportunities to learn. Because in my early seasons, in my early career, all I did was win. So that became the mental stage on how I valued myself. And if then I didn't win, then I didn't have the same value. That was also a mental reset I had to work through.
What advice would you give to another athlete, a young athlete that is going to have a long career like you did?
I would say keep working at what you love. Don't be chasing those plastic trophies, which are those early ones that give those kids that early fame, right? Because that does not indicate longevity. I would say keep setting goals for yourself, 6 months, a year, 5 years, reassess those every 6 months to see how you have to adjust, because life isn't structured how you want. Life is not a blueprint. There's constant changes happening, and being a true athlete, you have to adapt and go with the flow.
Did you ever think you would be that successful? Or was that always your plan?
That was never my plan.
Never your plan?
No. Border cross was not an Olympic sport when I was growing up, when the Olympics and the prestige to be an American representing your country, going to open ceremonies. You saw it for every sport. And I was involved in a lot of sports, but my parents were like, oh, you're going to go to Olympics for this. It was more so, wouldn't it be amazing if you went to the Olympics for a sport? You could go for this or you could go for that. It wasn't like you're set on this path and you're going for that. That's one thing I do really love that my parents did. And they put me in all different sports growing up. It taught me how to be a team player. It was mostly team sports that I was in, but I did swimming and, a lot of other, individual things as well. But it helps you kind of be this well-rounded athlete. And then when the opportunity came to go to Stratton Mountain School and train and snowboard Like my parents are like, why not try this? This is just different. Like this is not a normal path, and who knows where it could lead you. You obviously like doing this. Like, you know, maybe there's schools that would have scholarships for this. And then the year I was graduating, that was when my sport was announced it was going to make its Olympic debut. And so my parents are like, oh my God, we always knew you'd like go to the Olympics because we saw like how competitive you were and how much drive you had and how intense you were as a competitor, but we just never knew what it would be. And here it is. It's border cross.
That's rad. That's super cool. Is the Olympics the peak of an athlete?
I think the Olympics is a peak on the world stage for sure. Definitely the biggest hype and the biggest, you know, push for exposure worldwide of your sport. Okay. So for border cross, yes, I think there's maybe some sports that maybe I'm not as knowledgeable in other sports, but it seems like other individuals might choose to skip out on the Olympics because they rather not change up their team environment, and they stick with what they're doing and their contracts work with them, and it would be a conflict of interest to go to the Olympics. So I don't know all the rules across all sports and all team sports and all things like that. But as far as myself, I mean, I grew up watching Peekaboo Street and watching like the gymnasts and those individuals and be like, oh my God, like that would be so cool to do that. And it just so happened that's how it lined up for me.
You hit the peak. You're on the world stage being recognized. That's awesome. Did it ever take the fun out of it? Like, I mean, there had to have been some days where you had to go on the mountain and you were tired, or I'm guessing. I don't know.
100%. And,
there was. Okay.
And there was even a kid I was mentoring that asked me, he was like, well, are there just days that you don't like it? And I told him 100% there are. There are days that chasing that 1% of improvement is impossible. You can't improve every day on that 1% margin. And that becomes mentally and emotionally and physically just so fatiguing. So what I told him is you have to look at the overall picture. If your days that you're having a lot of fun with a sport are still far surpassing those moments that you are upset or run down or not having fun, then that's okay. You can then just tell yourself, okay, maybe this is just not my day. I'm not going to really accomplish anything. I could just do this for fun and not expect anything great out of this day, or, you know, just call it a day and not even train that day. Yeah. And focus on the next day. Maybe you're tired. Maybe you've been traveling. Maybe you've just been overtraining. And you have to recognize that. And there were moments that I would be doing that. And then until I could communicate with my coaches, being more mature and telling them, this is what I'm dealing with. This is why I'm tired. And they'd be like, okay, well then you're done for the day. You're not going to improve on your situation. So now you're just beating yourself in the ground and making yourself not feel great about it. So the great thing about snowboarding is, like, go take some free ride laps, go take a couple of pow turns. Like, don't try to force something today. Okay. And that was the bigger key moments in my mentoring chapters that I've hoped to pass on, and hopefully that stuck for that individual.
That's awesome. Lindsey, is there anything we're missing here?
Book launch is October 17th. I'll be in New York. I'm very excited. Okay.
Very excited.
Yeah. Big things to come, and I hope some wonderful opportunities can open up as far as how I can reach people and hopefully inspire them to live their best lives and push themselves to get to whatever dream they have.
Those are good words right there. This is Mike and Lindsey, and we are out of here. Thank you, Lindsey, so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mike.
Life has its twists, has its turns. Life's many months, many seasons. Time flows at one pace, it don't change. Such beauty in being alive on earth. And every little thing on this planet has such worth. For it's with the simple things in life, whoa, simple things in life, they make me smile. Simple things in life, simple things in life, they make me smile. Sun comes up in the morning, birds how they sing, well, it's dawning. Sun it casts a warm shadow around me. I look to the sky and 'tis well in my eyes. For does our human race only know one pace? It's like an overpass, underpass, 6-lane highway. An overpass, underpass, 6-lane highway, yeah. A cellular technology runs our life. For it's with the simple things in life, whoa, simple things in life that make me smile. Simple things in life, simple things in life, they make me smile. Sun comes up in the morning, birds how they sing, well, it's dawning. Like watching my baby begin to wake, letting loving's old cool stream run over me. You gotta go with the feeling in your soul, go with the few things that you know. For it's with the simple things in life, whoa, simple things in life, they make me smile. Simple things in life, simple things in life, they make me smile. Simple things in life, simple things in life, they make me smile. 'Cause it's the simple things, oh, it's the simple things, they make me smile.
Hey, you guys, Endless Summer box set. This thing is legit. It's authentic, numbered certificate in it. It has a 5-frame film strip from the original print. You will literally own a piece of history. It has a specially minted bronze medallion. Dude, that thing's sick. Okay, there's so much more here. Go to the show notes. There's a link on there. Go check this piece of history out. This thing's rad. Seriously. Smithsonian American History Museum has it. It took 4 years of research with 3.5 in production, all hand assembled. This thing's rad. So much to this awesome box set. Remastered DVD, sharper images than the original film, but dude, this thing's so sick. Link in the show notes.